Emily pushed through the sliding doors as rain hammered the asphalt, and the antiseptic air bit her lungs like ice. Her heartbeat cinched with the monitors. A nurse glanced up, then looked away too fast. Emily said, "Where is he?" Dr. Harris stepped from the corridor, tie loosened, eyes rimmed red by a sleepless night. Dr. Harris said, "Liam is critical." The word split her open. She followed him past rooms that glowed like small moons. She saw her 8-year-old, small and pale, drowned in tubes. Emily said, "Baby, I'm here." Her voice cracked like thin glass. Alarms murmured. The rain drilled the window. Dr. Harris said, "We are doing everything we can." Emily nodded, but her knees blurred beneath her. She remembered his serial smile, the milk mustache he wore like a badge. She wanted to trade places, to unzip her ribs and tuck him inside. Emily said, "Tell me the truth." Dr. Harris held the chart like a shield. Dr. Harris said, "Infections complicate his lungs." The room tilted. She grabbed the rail. She felt the floor slipping, and the world shrank to the rise of his chest. Emily said, "Please breathe." Silence answered. Emily stood at the sink hours earlier in a memory that now felt stolen by rain and glass. The toaster clicked. "Do." Liam drew a stick-figure astronaut on a napkin and grinned like the sun under a cloud. Emily said, "Helmet looks strong." He puffed his cheeks and blasted off. The coffee was weak, and her bank app was worse. She counted tips with a sigh and the quiet math of survival. Maya texted a row of hearts and a joke about miracles made from coupons. "Why?" Emily said, "Today we'll behave." The lie felt gentle. Liam asked for extra marshmallows, and she bartered for one reading page. He agreed with a solemn nod that made her laugh. The bus door folded him away, and she watched the window hold his brave face. Emily said, "Be safe." The street smelled like rain even before the storm. She pictured a future with white walls and no bills chasing them. Then a call from school detonated that calm. A fever. A cough. A worry that walked on 2 legs toward panic. The diner smelled like syrup and exhaustion, and the clock over the griddle lay about hope. Emily balanced plates and pleas on the same tray. She hid worry under a smile that pinched at the edges. Emily said, "Extra blueberries. On me." A trucker laughed and called her a saint. Tips folded into a jar like paper prayers. The manager watched the door as if money might wander in. Her phone pulsed with the school nurse's update, and her chest tightened. Emily said, "He'll be okay." The sentence wobbled. Maya arrived for coffee and slid a brave smile across the counter. Maya said, "You're the toughest person I know." Emily breathed it in like medicine. Then the phone rang again, sharper, colder. The nurse said, "We need you now." The tray rattled, and the world tipped toward the exit. Emily said, "Cover me." She grabbed her coat and her fear and ran. The ambulance siren cut the afternoon into pieces, and Emily chased it in a borrowed ride with knuckles chalk white. At the hospital curb, Noah appeared with calm like a blanket. He was 34, tall and steady in navy scrubs. Noah said, "I'll get you upstairs fast." She wanted to protest control, then surrendered to pace. The elevator's mirrored walls showed a woman she barely knew. Emily said, "He was fine this morning." Noah met her eyes without flinching. Noah said, "You are here now." The doors opened into cold light and moving shadows. Paper bracelets bit her wrist. Dr. Harris waited in a small room that swallowed every sound. He spoke in careful syllables that sounded like thunder. Emily said, "Tell me how to help." He gave her tasks that were really kindness. Call Maya, breathe, touch his hand. She did the last thing first. The room hummed like a tired beehive as Emily stood guard. Liam's skin felt warm against her cold fingers. Emily said, "I'm here, astronaut." His lashes trembled against banded tape. A text from Ryan crawled across her screen like oil. Ryan said, I can help if you meet me. Old arguments woke like hornets. She tucked the phone away as if it could not bite in the dark. Dr. Harris returned with numbers that tried to be facts and failed to be comfort. Emily said, do the thing that buys us time. He nodded and moved like a man who had already sprinted. In the corner, Noah adjusted a drip and found her eyes again. Noah said, you are doing enough. The words landed like a soft anchor. Outside, thunder rearranged the sky, and rain drummed its steady drum. Emily said, please stay. No one argued with a prayer. The cafeteria smelled of burnt coffee and fear as Emily cradled a paper cup like it could warm more than her hands. She stared at the vending machine reflection where her face looked older by years. Maya arrived in her bright scarf, shaking raindrops onto the floor, her presence steady like an anchor dropped in a storm. Maya said, you look like you fought a war. Emily laughed without sound, her lips refusing joy. Emily said, I don't know how to keep breathing when he can't. Maya slid beside her, their shoulders touching, and whispered promises of shared weight. The cafeteria chatter faded, leaving the buzz of fluorescent lights and the ticking of a wall clock. Emily said, he's my everything. Maya gripped her wrist and answered, and you are his. Emily blinked, swallowing salt and steel. For a moment, she believed she could stand again. The storm outside rattled the glass, but her friend's voice was louder than the rain. Emily walked the sterile hall with footsteps echoing like hollow prayers. Posters for wellness mocked her exhaustion. She reached the chapel door, its wood darker than the rest of the hospital's pale skin. Inside, candles flickered shadows like breaths of doubt. Emily knelt, though she had no practiced words, her palms pressed together clumsily. Emily said, if there's anything listening, don't take him. Her voice cracked against the silence. Memories pressed into her mind. Liam laughing in the park, cereal milk dripping on his chin, him shouting, race you, mama? Emily's tears fell onto the pew wood, staining it darker. The silence offered no answers, only the hum of the building around her. A chaplain passed quietly, nodding with a kindness that stung. Emily whispered again, please, I'll trade anything. The waiting room clock marked each second like a gavel. Emily sat in a plastic chair, surrounded by strangers whose stories bled into hers through silence. Across the aisle, a man clutched his wife's sweater, staring into nothing. Emily folded Liam's small sneakers in her lap, tracing the laces with her thumb. Emily said, he was supposed to outgrow these. Her breath trembled as she remembered buying them, too big, so he could run longer before needing new ones. Noah appeared with quiet steadiness, kneeling beside her. Noah said, we're monitoring closely. She nodded, though her heart clanged in protest. He added, you should eat something. Emily said, I can't swallow hope, so what's the point? He stayed kneeling, his eyes gentle, before leaving her to the silence that swelled again. Emily stepped into the restroom, locking the door as if it could hold back reality. The mirror was merciless, reflecting a woman hollowed by fear. Emily said, hold it together. She splashed water, watching drops trail down her cheeks like counterfeit strength. She thought of Liam's favorite bedtime story, how he begged for just one more page, and how she always relented. Emily whispered, I can't fail you now. She pressed her palms against the counter until her arms shook. The hum of the vent swallowed her sob. She pulled out her phone, hesitated, then typed a message to Ryan. He's critical. Don't make this about you. She deleted it before sending. The screen glowed like a lie in her hand. Emily said, not him, not now. She pocketed it, lifted her chin, and unlocked the door to walk back into the wall. Emily returned to the ICU, Liam's small chest rising like fragile paper. She took his hand, small and hot in hers, and whispered, I'm still here, my star. His eyelids fluttered, not fully waking, but acknowledging her presence. Machines blinked in rhythm, each beep striking like a bell. Dr. Harris entered, his face grave but not unkind. Dr. Harris said, we've stabilized him for now, but it's still dangerous. Emily nodded, gripping Liam tighter, her tears falling on his blanket. Maya stood at the door, eyes swollen but firm. Maya said, "You don't have to do this alone." Emily whispered back, "He's my reason." The storm outside rolled again, thunder shuddering the windows. The room felt both too small and too infinite. Emily kissed Liam's forehead softly. Emily said, "I'll hold the world up for you, even if it breaks me." Bills stacked like bricks in Emily's purse, each one heavier than her breath. She sat in the hospital's financial office, fluorescent lights buzzing like a hive above her head. The clerk tapped at a keyboard, eyes never lifting, voice flat as paper. Clerk said, "Insurance doesn't cover this admission." Emily clenched her fists on her lap, nails cutting crescents into her palms. Emily said, "There must be something." The clerk handed her a sheet of numbers that looked more like shackles. She saw Liam's sneakers in her bag, the laces tangled like a reminder of childhood slipping away. Emily whispered, "I'll find a way." Outside the glass office door, Noah waited, jaw tense, arms crossed like a guard. Emily said, "I can't fail him." Her voice cracked into pieces she couldn't gather. The storm in her chest matched the one still pacing the windows. Emily stepped outside into the parking lot, air thick with rain still clinging to asphalt. Her phone buzzed again, Ryan's name glowing like poison. She ignored it once, twice, then finally pressed accept. Ryan said, "You can't do this alone. I can help." His voice was syrup, sweet but toxic. Emily said, "Your help comes with chains." Ryan laughed low, a sound she remembered from darker nights. Ryan said, "Chains or survival, Emily, your choice." She stared at her reflection in the wet car hood, her face fractured by water streaks. Emily whispered, "I'll never owe you again." She hung up, her chest shaking with fury and fear. Behind her, thunder cracked, scattering birds into the sky like warnings. Maya met her in the lobby with a backpack full of snacks and small comforts, trying to stitch a wound that needed more than food. Maya said, "Take a bite, you'll collapse." Emily shook her head, jaw tight. Emily said, "Every second gone is one I don't get back." Maya pressed a granola bar into her hand anyway. Emily stared at it, unwrapping slowly like opening guilt. She forced a bite, tasted cardboard, swallowed stones. Maya said, "You're allowed to need things too." Emily's eyes filled again, though she bit the inside of her cheek to stop them. She whispered, "Needing feels selfish when he's fighting to breathe." Maya reached across, steadying her. Maya said, "He needs you whole." The words settled like reluctant truth, heavier than food. Emily returned to Liam's room, the monitors steady but fragile. She sat at his side, brushing damp curls from his forehead. Emily said, "It's Mama, astronaut, you're winning this mission." His lips moved faintly, no sound but hope. Dr. Harris entered quietly, his presence a weight. Dr. Harris said, "There's a complication with his lungs. We'll need intervention soon." The word, intervention, stabbed like cold steel. Emily said, "Do what saves him." He nodded, chart trembling slightly in his hand. Noah adjusted the lines, his jaw set firm. Emily said, "Stay strong, baby." She kissed Liam's temple and held him tighter, as if her touch could rewrite fate. The machines beeped in steady rhythm, but her heart raced in a different song. The evening crept in, shadows swallowing the ward, as lights clicked on in sterile rhythm. Emily leaned against the window watching rain smear city lights into streaks of melted color. Her phone buzzed with another message from Ryan. "Meet me or you'll regret it." She deleted it without opening, though her chest tightened with dread. Maya touched her shoulder gently, grounding her. Emily said, "He'll use Liam against me." Maya shook her head. Maya said he already did. "Don't let him win again." Emily stared out at the storm, her reflection fractured against glass, the hospital glowing behind her like both prison and sanctuary. She whispered, "I can't lose him." The thunder rolled like a drumbeat to her vow. The night pressed heavy against the hospital walls, its silence broken only by distant thunder and the faint beep of machines. Emily sat at Liam's bedside, her body slumped, but her hand fiercely clasping his. Her phone buzzed again, Ryan's name flashing like a curse. She almost let it die, but rage pressed her finger to accept. Ryan said, "You need money. I have it. Meet me." Emily whispered, "Not here, not now." He sneered through the line, "Everything you touch breaks without me." She slammed the phone shut, tears welling and spilling unchecked. Noah entered, holding a fresh IV, his eyes catching hers. Noah said, "You don't owe him anything." Emily nodded, though her heart still trembled under the weight of Ryan's words. She leaned closer to Liam, whispering, "You are the only truth that matters." The storm outside growled, and the room felt like a battlefield. Emily stepped into the stairwell, cold concrete echoing each step, as if she were descending into a cavern of doubts. She pressed her forehead to the railing, her breath ragged. Maya's call lit up her phone and she answered, voice trembling. Emily said, "He's worse, Maya. Ryan won't leave me alone." Maya's voice was a lifeline, calm and fierce. Maya said, "He's feeding on your fear. Don't give him power." Emily clenched her jaw, nodding to herself in the emptiness. Emily whispered, "I don't know if I'm strong enough." Maya answered, "You already are. Look where you are still standing." Emily closed her eyes, a tear carving down her cheek, and breathed out slowly, the stairwell humming with silence. She whispered, "Then I'll fight." Later, Dr. Harris pulled Emily aside into a small consultation room, its sterile walls swallowing the air. He carried his clipboard like it weighed the world. Dr. Harris said, "We need to attempt an invasive procedure. It carries risk." Emily's breath caught, her eyes wide, heart pounding against her ribs. Emily said, "Risk means hope, do it." He nodded gravely, though she saw his hesitation flicker like a candle in a draught. The silence pressed tight until Emily said, "I'd rather fight with him than lose quietly." Dr. Harris lowered his eyes, signing the form with hands that carried both duty and regret. Emily's fingers trembled as she pressed her initials beside his. The pen felt heavier than any stone. She whispered, "I'll carry whatever comes." Emily returned to the room where Noah prepped the machines, his hands sure and calm despite the storm in the air. Liam lay still, his face pale, chest rising shallowly under wires and tubes. Emily pressed her forehead to his, whispering, "I'm right here, astronaut. You're not alone." Noah paused, glancing at her with something like admiration. Noah said, "He knows you're here. That matters." Emily's tears dotted the blanket like tiny storms of their own. She stroked Liam's hair, her voice trembling. Emily said, "I'll trade every dream, every breath if it keeps you." The machine alarms hummed softly, waiting like impatient judges. The weight of the room pressed down on them both, but Emily held Liam's hand tighter, her grip promising he wouldn't face this fight without her. The night deepened, hours dragging like chains as Emily paced the hall outside the operating suite. Her shoes squeaked on polished tiles, her arms wrapped around herself. Ryan's voice replayed in her head like poison on repeat. Emily whispered, "He won't win. Not this time." Maya arrived, hair damp from the rain, carrying 2 coffees. She pressed one into Emily's hand, warm against her trembling fingers. Maya said, "You're not alone in this hallway." Emily managed a broken smile, sipping bitter comfort. The red "In Progress" sign glowed above the door, washing them both in warning light. Emily said, "I can't lose him, Maya." Her friend wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Maya said, "Then we'll pray and we'll wait, together." The minutes ached forward, each one heavier than the last. The surgical doors burst open with a gust of cold air, and Dr. Harris emerged, his face pale and drawn like parchment. Emily rose from the bench so fast her knees almost buckled. Dr. Harris said, "He survived the procedure, but recovery is uncertain." Relief crashed into her chest like a wave, but fear still lingered sharp as glass. Emily whispered, "Thank you," her voice a fragile echo of hope. She sank back, palms pressed to her face, sobs shaking through the cracks she had tried to seal. Maya rubbed her shoulders, steady and firm. Noah stepped out from behind Dr. Harris, his eyes heavy but kind. Noah said, "You gave him a chance." Emily nodded, whispering to herself, "That's all I needed." The hallway lights hummed above, casting long shadows over their weary forms, as if even the building held its breath. Emily walked into the ICU once more, where Liam lay small and fragile, his breath shallow but steady. She touched his hand gently, whispering, "You fought, astronaut. You made it back to orbit." The machines hummed like a chorus of second chances. His eyelashes fluttered, a tiny movement that split her heart open. Emily said, "Mama's here, always." Her tears slid onto his blanket, soaking into its folds like promises. Noah adjusted a monitor beside her, nodding once. "Noah said he's stronger than we think." Emily whispered, "He's everything I am." The storm had finally begun to break outside, rain softening to drizzle against the window, leaving streaks of light from the city beyond. Emily rested her forehead against his hand, her voice breaking on a vow. Emily said, "I'll never let anyone hurt you again." Ryan appeared at the hospital entrance, his suit damp from rain, his smirk sharper than the storm that had passed. Emily froze when she saw him, every memory of betrayal clawing back into her throat. Ryan said, "You should thank me. Without me, you're nothing." Emily stood taller, her fists clenched at her sides, her voice finally iron. Emily said, "Without you, I survived. Without you, he's alive." Ryan sneered, stepping closer, his eyes cold. Ryan said, "You'll crawl back, you always do." Maya moved beside Emily, her presence unyielding, a wall against his poison. Emily shook her head slowly, her words deliberate. Emily said, "Not anymore. You don't get to write my story." Ryan's smile faltered for the first time. The hospital lights glared above them like spotlights, casting truth where lies once thrived. Emily faced Ryan directly, her voice steady though her chest shook. Emily said, "You let him get sick. You chose control over his safety." Ryan's face hardened, his smirk shattering into silence. Emily stepped forward, her eyes burning. Emily said, "Every bruise, every tear. You caused this." His jaw worked, but no words came. For the first time, he looked smaller, weaker. Emily's voice sharpened, every syllable a strike. Emily said, "You don't own me, and you never will again." Maya held her breath beside her, watching Ryan falter under the weight of truth. Emily's tears streamed freely now, not from weakness but release. Ryan turned away, his silence louder than his threats. Emily whispered to herself, "It ends here." The words filled the hall like thunder rolling through hollow walls. Emily collapsed back into the waiting chair, her body trembling, but her spirit burning stronger than before. Maya crouched beside her, holding her hands. Maya said, "You broke free." Emily exhaled, a sound between relief and grief. Emily whispered, "I should have done it sooner." Noah approached quietly, his presence like calm water after a storm. "Noah said, what matters is you did it now." Emily nodded, staring at the floor before lifting her gaze to the ICU door, glowing faint with light. Emily said, "He'll wake to a safer world. I promise him that." Her shoulders sagged, but not in defeat, only in the weight. She finally sat down. The clock above ticked past 2 a.m., marking the moment she reclaimed her voice. The dawn crept in through the rain-streaked windows, painting the ward in soft gray light. Emily sat at Liam's bedside, her head resting against the mattress, fingers still locked around his hand. His chest rose faintly, each breath a fragile miracle. Emily whispered, "You're still here, astronaut. You made it through the night." The machines blinked steadily, like stars guiding a ship across dark seas. Noah entered quietly, setting a chart down, his voice gentle. "Noah said he's stable, but he needs your strength as much as the medicine." Emily lifted her head, exhausted but fierce. Emily said, "He has it. Every part of me is his." The storm outside had passed, leaving behind only silence and the smell of clean air, as if even nature paused to let him heal. Emily stepped into the family lounge, its vending machines humming like tired sentinels. She rubbed her eyes raw, staring at the sunrise cutting through blinds. Maya joined her with a paper cup of coffee, sliding it across the table. Maya said, "You didn't break last night. That means you won." Emily smiled faintly, a crack of light across her worn features. Emily said, "Winning still feels like drowning." Maya touched her hand, squeezing gently. Maya said, "That's what survival feels like before it becomes living again." Emily breathed deep, the words sinking into her bones. She whispered, "If he wakes, I'll rebuild everything." Maya nodded, her face fierce with loyalty. The rising sun turned the room golden, promising a new day even amid exhaustion. Back in the room, Emily watched Liam stir faintly, his eyelids twitching as though fighting his way back from a long dark tunnel. She leaned closer, voice breaking into prayer. Emily said, "It's Mama, astronaut. Come back to me." His hand twitched in hers, the smallest movement, but it unraveled her completely. Emily's tears spilled freely, soaking the sheet. Noah stepped closer, eyes wide, hopeful. Noah said, "That's a response, he's trying." Emily kissed Liam's knuckles, her whisper a promise. Emily said, "I'm here every second, you're safe now." The monitors kept rhythm like drums of hope, filling the room with fragile music. For the first time in days, her chest loosened, as if breath returned to her too. Emily stood at the window, rain having washed the city into a mirror of silver and light. Her reflection looked back at her, not broken but remade through fire. She whispered, "I thought I was weak, but I wasn't. I just forgot how to fight." Maya entered behind her, quiet, carrying Liam's favorite blanket freshly laundered. Maya said, "He'll want this when he wakes." Emily touched the fabric, her lips trembling in a small smile. Emily said, "He'll wake to love, not fear. That's my vow." The city hummed beneath them, alive with new beginnings. Emily pressed the blanket to her chest, as if holding it could tether her heart to tomorrow. The ward quieted as nurses shifted, and the morning light grew brighter, filling every corner of the sterile halls. Emily returned to Liam's side, placing the blanket gently over him. Emily whispered, "Your world is safe now. Sleep until you're ready." His hand rested on hers, small and fragile, but warm. Noah stepped in, chart in hand, smiling softly. "Noah," said, "he's holding steady. That's the best news we've had yet." Emily closed her eyes, inhaling peace she had forgotten existed. She leaned forward, brushing her lips across Liam's forehead. Emily said, "I'll carry every scar, but you'll heal." The moment was quiet, powerful, as though the storm of their lives had finally given way to dawn. The morning sun spilled into the ICU like gold, poured over steel, warming corners that once held only shadows. Emily sat by Liam's side, exhaustion etched deep, but her spirit steadier than stone. She stroked his hair gently, whispering, "You're safe, my star, and we'll walk forward together." Liam stirred, a faint sound escaping his lips, fragile but real. Emily's breath caught, her chest burning with sudden hope. Noah entered, carrying a chart, his smile softening the air. Noah said, "He's improving, slowly, but it's real." Emily looked up, tears shining but no longer desperate, only grateful. She whispered, "He's coming back to me." For the first time, the machines felt like background noise instead of the soundtrack of fear. Emily stepped into the courtyard for the first time in days, the crisp air washing over her like baptism. She tilted her head back, letting the light strike her face, eyes closed against the warmth. Maya sat on the bench, waiting with 2 cups of tea, her scarf bright as ever. Maya said, "The sky finally cleared for you." Emily laughed softly, the sound rusty but real, carrying traces of freedom. Emily said, "It feels like I can breathe again." She sat beside her friend, shoulders brushing, and let silence carry their gratitude. The world outside the hospital walls still spun with chaos, but in this sliver of time, the storm had passed. Back in the ward, Emily sat reading softly from Liam's favorite book, her voice steady even as her throat tightened. She turned the pages slowly, letting the story drift into the sterile air. Liam's eyes flickered open briefly, the faintest spark of recognition glinting before fatigue pulled him back into rest. Emily's tears slid silently, but her lips curled in a smile. Emily whispered, "That's my brave boy." Noah, standing nearby, leaned against the wall, his eyes shining with quiet admiration. He said nothing, but his presence spoke of unwavering support. The room no longer felt like a battlefield. It was becoming a place of healing, woven together by love, patience, and faith. Emily stepped into the hallway, pressing her back against the wall, her eyes lifting toward the ceiling tiles like a silent prayer. For the first time, her tears weren't carved from despair but release. She whispered, "We survived." Maya appeared, holding her phone, showing a photo of Liam running in the park weeks ago, his smile stretched wide with sunlight in his hair. Emily laughed through her tears, the memory a balm and a promise. Maya said, "He'll get back there. You'll both get back there." Emily nodded, clutching the photo as if it were oxygen. The hallway, once suffocating, now felt wide enough to hold her hope. That night, Emily returned to Liam's room, the world hushed under the silver of the moonlight. She sat beside him, stroking his hand, her voice a whisper barely above the hum of machines. Emily said, "I would do it all again, every tear, every fight, every scar. For you, I would." Liam stirred in his sleep, his lips curving faintly as if hearing her. The camera of her life lingered there, on her weary but luminous face, her love carved deeper than pain. Outside, the city lights shimmered, but inside, only a mother and son mattered. The silence that followed was sacred, heavy with love, fragile with hope, and it lingered like a final vow that would outlast the night.